Heather picking is an extremely important part of Scottish vernacular thatching, a craft very specific to our country. The picking of heather is a vital part of the process, and it's not quite as straightforward as you might think. Scottish vernacular thatching is defined by its use of non-standard thatching materials such as bracken, rushes, or in this case, heather. Heather is a fantastic thatching material. Its main historical advantage would have been its abundance compared to other plants. As you can see, it's a very common plant around here. And a good heather thatch will last about 30 years with maintenance done to the ridge every 5 years or so. As far as I'm aware, there isn't any evidence or documentation on how heather was gathered for thatch. Nonetheless, it's an essential part of the craft and a skill in its own right. We have plenty of evidence on how heather was used on the roof, but little on how it was gathered. Bearing in mind that because of the lack of historical evidence, this isn't necessarily the exact same way it would have been done in the past, but it's the way that we find works best. When picking good heather, you want to keep in mind what you want it to do on the roof. The idea is to shed water as quickly as possible. To that end, we want our material to be as long, thin, and as flexible as possible so we can form it into a shape called the yelm, like so. We do occasionally need shorter bits of heather to thatch on the ridge, but we can always cut that down from longer stuff. Bad heather, on the other hand, is the opposite. It's short, it's woody, it's disorganized, and it won't shed water efficiently. When picking heather, you want to grasp a good handful of long, straight heather from the base and lift it out. If it's stubborn, try pulling against the direction in which it is laying, as the roots will be weaker here. Once picked, clean the roots of any dirt and get rid of any root nodules by whacking them against the side of your boot or a nearby tree. Once you've picked enough, it's time for bundling. A bundle of heather should be about as much as you can physically reach your arms around while squeezing, weighing roughly 10 kilos. To tie a bundle together, you'll need 2 pieces of baling twine with a loop at one end. Arrange all of your picked heather with the fronds facing the same direction and gather it between your legs. I often start by baling the frond end first, as this makes baling the root end a lot easier. Wrap the twine around the bale and tie it off with a simple knot, making sure to ratchet and compress the heather as much as possible. Do the same with the root end, and you'll end up with a bale with 2 ties in it, one at each end. You need vast quantities of heather in order to thatch a roof. On this particular pick, we're aiming for around 180 bales, but that's only for a repair job. A full roof would be something like 450 bales. It's a very labour-intensive process, and it can only really be done by hand. Not only is it hard graft, but the conditions can be trying too. Because it's Scotland, the weather can be very varied. It can go from lovely sunny weather like we have today to snow and blizzard in the blink of an eye. Because of this, we need anything from sun hats, sun cream, to waterproofs and warm clothes wherever we go. We also have to deal with midges, and as a result, midge nets are often needed. And the only other danger is ticks and tick-borne Lyme's disease, so we make sure to do a good tick check at the end of each day. Oftentimes, the hardest thing about heather picking is finding a site where good heather is growing. This is hard to ascertain from a distance without getting boots on the ground and having a rummage, though a few rules of thumb can be followed. We often find north-facing slopes, under pine cover and in boggy ground, often yield good heather for thatching. North-facing slopes face away from the sun, so any heather that grows there wants to grow as quickly as possible, making it thin and straight, whilst the boggy ground also encourages this growth, as does the tree cover. Finding a good heather picking site is a time-consuming process that involves liaising with forestry, estates, private landowners and community interest groups, and also a lot of driving up and down forestry tracks. Picking heather in this way is not an environmentally damaging process. It doesn't involve clear felling large swathes of land, just by virtue of the fact that we can only use heather of a very specific quality. In fact, there's an argument to be made that picking heather in this way mimics what would have been done by creatures such as wild boar and pigs, creating gaps in the heather and allowing things like trees and nesting birds to inhabit that space that otherwise would have been taken up by heather, which is a very, very voracious plant. And because it grows so fast, it's a very sustainable building material. Though we can't have been sure how it was done exactly in the past, it's safe to assume that it would have been quite a communal experience to pick heather. It's just something that requires quite a lot of hands at any given time. To that extent, we're keen to run our heather picks as quite a communal experience in themselves. The pay's not great, but if food and accommodation's included, it can be a bit of a fun working holiday. And here we have our well-picked heather going on the roof. Heather picking is also a fantastic opportunity to involve local people in traditional crafts who otherwise might not be exposed to it. If we're thatching some kind of community building, then involving local people in the process establishes an immediate emotional connection with that building, a connection that's otherwise lacking in our built environment. With the right skills and the right raw materials, a heather thatch building won't need to be rethatched for another 30 years.